Welcome to History Happy Hour. I'm your host, Jess Edberg, Executive Director of the Dorothy Molter Museum, and I'm here to educate, inspire, and entertain you with a pint-sized historical tale related to Ely Area history in about the time it takes to drink a pint of ale. If you are new, the history I share is not a deep dive, rather it scratches the surface using publicly accessible resources. History Happy Hour is supported in kind by all of these wonderful supporters, and it would not happen without them. Additionally, if you know someone who may like this programming, the last 2 seasons, including this year, are available online via YouTube under the Dorothy Molter Museum's channel or as a podcast on your favorite platforms, as well as playlists for each topic that are currently on Apple Music, migrating from Spotify. So, let's begin with 2 things. One, the history of social clubs in the Ely area is vast. Even with not counting churches as a social group, there was no way for me to include every single club. So I tried to select those that sounded interesting, had relevance to you as my audience, and had longevity. So please know you can learn more about these and the many other clubs that existed and still exist at the Ely Winton Historical Society. Second, I think it's important to establish some common language and define a social club and what its purpose is. The word social club can have a variety of connotations depending on your geographic location, cultural traditions, and age. For this program, we'll define social club at its most basic level, an organized group of people who get together for a shared interest, such as a hobby, activity, or a desire to foster community and interaction. They can be an informal gathering to a formal, membership-based entity or not. These clubs can be loosely operated or have distinct goals and outcomes. The common thread is a primary purpose, a social or recreational benefit to those involved. If you've been to one of these programs before, you know we're about to embark on a bit more of a history journey than what clubs existed and continue to exist in the Ely area. And the history of social clubs goes way back, as far back as the evolution of Homo sapiens in reality, because humans are social creatures, even those who identify as introverts. But don't take my word for it. Dr. Stephen Brerein is a neuroscientist and psychologist who examines how environments of stress, such as poverty and socioeconomic disadvantage, shape psychological and brain development. He asserts that social connection is a basic human need, as important as food, water, and shelter for our ability to thrive and survive. It is rooted deeply within our biological structure through evolution, which allowed humans the ability to connect, communicate, and cooperate with each other. But why? Research by a lot of people, including Dr. Brerein, shows that survival is increased when social connections are present. Have you ever heard the old adage, there is safety in numbers? Of course, this concept is seen across species, from white-tailed deer herding up in the winter, schools of fish, packs of wolves, troops of monkeys. When you stay in a group, you don't have to be the fastest or strongest or smartest to survive, just a peg up from someone else. Living in a group also spreads out the work related to raising young, further increasing the odds of survival for all. An evolutionary result of this social living is more complex social structure and communication, as well as increased teaching skills to pass on knowledge. To accommodate this increasing neural complexity, our brains grew bigger as well. Additionally, this also extended the length of time for humans to mature physically and mentally, requiring more care and caregivers. Of course, this is just the tip of the neuroscience iceberg of human behavioral and physical evolution, but it does support our innate need for social connection. But what about folks who become socially disconnected, either by choice or circumstance? Research using modern brain scan technology supports the theory that we also evolved a signal to let us know when we don't have adequate social connection in our lives, called loneliness. This research suggests that social isolation will trigger a craving for socialization similar to a craving for food when hungry. So according to this research, humans have been instinctively creating and joining social clubs for thousands of years. So, back to the primary purpose of a social club being a social or recreational benefit to those involved. The need to belong is a fundamental aspect of human nature, and social clubs provide an ideal setting for this need to be met. In fact, there are numerous studies, reports, books, and even films linking frequent socializing to a longer lifespan and greater quality of life, especially in older people. So, yay us, as I identify as an older people. So, let's keep up the good work. And conversely, a lack of social connection can have serious negative health consequences, including chronic loneliness that is more devastating to your health and well being than smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. When taking into account the unfortunate reality that health and happiness are unequally distributed across space and time, there is tangible evidence that social clubs not only benefit its members, but the community as well, regardless of place or time of birth and upbringing. However, let us not gloss over the fact that there were and are clubs specifically formed to steal the health, happiness, and well being from others and acknowledge their existence so we can commit to diminishing their power. Tonight, we're focusing on the positive, beneficial clubs of Ely, social clubs that span the activity, interest, and topic spectrum here in our small community and surrounding area, offering an impressive number of groups, including a variety of sporting groups, community service groups, outdoor endeavor groups, religious groups, arts and culture groups, politically engaged groups, hobby and gaming groups, and new ones are popping up, seasonally or otherwise. So let's take a trip back in time and look at some of the historical social networks in our area. Indigenous peoples, the original inhabitants, live in community groups or clans which provide the inherent social connection through familial bonds and close relationships that rely on mutual aid and cooperation. Colonization significantly disrupted these systems, and we are in the midst of a powerful reclaiming and revitalizing of them. Powwows were and continue to be gatherings for celebration and ceremony, often including feasting and social dances. Seasonal activities like wild rice harvesting, sports and games were and are intentional social opportunities for physical, cultural, and spiritual purposes. Bagadoduin, the Ojibwe word for lacrosse, is the creator's game. Historically, it was played to heal, to prepare warriors for battle, or to settle disputes between communities, but largely disappeared during the boarding school era in the US and Canada. Over the past few decades, it has seen waves of resurgence, but this past year, there has been a more concerted effort to engage with youth in tribal communities across Minnesota and reincorporate the healing, lessons, and ceremony through this sport. As non-native immigrants began to explore and eventually settle this area, they too had their own cultural beliefs, traditions, and activities that allowed them to build community, foster personal and professional growth, and enrich their lives. Many of the early immigrants were male and arrived alone to secure lodging and work prior to sending for their families, and often the idea of blending in or assimilating to fit in was promoted. In some cases, such as in early mines, the foreman would form teams of men with diverse ethnic backgrounds and language skills to prevent socializing, and in later years, to prevent unionizing. Spoiler alert, unions will be on this year's slate of programming in the new year. In an article by Lee Brownell about early Ely clubs, the early pioneers were for the most part young and restless. Joining a lodge or club banded people together to combat the loneliness and isolation that immigrating to a new land can create, especially when work conditions were so harsh, which may be why there were so many saloons in early Ely. Unsurprisingly, the Vesey Temperance Society of Ely was one of the very first clubs organized in 1889 with 27 Finnish charter members to combat the Wild West lawlessness and public drunkenness on the muddy streets of the newly established town of Ely, and at its peak had 500 members. By providing more wholesome recreation options, they were one of the first organizations to create athletic clubs, male choruses, mixed choirs, and playgroups, and were instrumental in the women's suffrage movement in Ely. They built the building that most of us know as the bowling alley, a block north of here, in 1895 to accommodate these wholesome activities, and it became the town center for community entertainment. Likewise, the Snowshoe Club was formed to promote companionship and exercise, specifically for those who engaged in more sedentary work. One of the club's toasts was, "A man with a belly round as a tub, he doesn't belong to Ely Snowshoe Club." Not necessarily the most positive recruitment slogan. The Men's Snowshoe Club was the first to form, with the Women's Club forming in January of 1890 as the wives of immigrants arrived to town. Both clubs fostered a sense of togetherness with coordinated club uniforms. This was also an era when women's work was typically focused on raising the family, mutual aid, and productive hobbies. This may be why many of the early social groups in the Ely area were started by women and provided opportunities to gain skills and/or teach others. Little is known about the women's knitting group other than it was started by Slovenian women and was one of the first women-only clubs in Ely. Today, there's an active knitting community that gathers to socialize, create, and share designs. The Ely Mothers Club started in October 1909 to promote and facilitate a better understanding of the school system, create fellowship among its members and teachers so they may work together more harmoniously, and was the precursor to the PTA. The Mothers Club meetings included student presentations and post-meeting social hour with refreshments for members that represented women from across the social spectrum in Ely at the time. Members worked with teachers to identify and help students from struggling families and coordinated fundraisers like dances and home talent plays to provide fuel, food, classes, and sometimes cash to those families. In 1922, the club sponsored a baby clinic with an infant specialist doctor and provided examinations to 66 babies. The club officially disbanded in 1932, but the remaining funds in baby clinic were transferred to the local parent-teacher association. Today, a Mother's Morning is an intergenerational community social and support group open to all mothers, and the Ely Parent Teacher Organization, or PTO, raises funds to cover student transportation costs, hosts book fairs, plans social activities, chaperones field trips and dances, and shows appreciation for Ely school teachers. With an abundance of natural resources surrounding the Ely area, it didn't take long for the Winton Rod and Gun Club to form in 1888 and the Ely Gun Club established by 1898 and become most well known for its passion for trap shooting. Both eventually merged and currently exist as the Ely Winton Rod and Gun Club. A youth program called Keep Minnesota Green Junior Rod and Gun Club sprouted from these organizations as well. Other recreational endeavors led to a variety of sporting teams. Did you know that Ely had a country club at one time? Baseball is hailed as America's pastime due to its deep roots in American culture. It played a unifying role during the Civil War, has an amazing ability to connect people intergenerationally, and is the perceived embodiment of core American values, which found a wide following among pioneers in Ely. Some of the early teams, the Fats and the Leans, and the Ink Spillers and Sawmillers, drew large crowds. Often, the Ely and Winton teams would play a doubleheader with a morning game in Winton and an afternoon game in Ely. And rumor has it that the teams and fans would party on the wagons during the 3-mile trips between towns. And let's not forget the whole January 2024 program on ski jumping in Ely, which of course is available on YouTube and via podcast. In some cases, teams were formed from already established clubs, such as the Italian American Progressive Club's basketball team. Speaking of Italians, according to David Kess, 2 Italian lodges were organized in the 1920s. In 1926, S.M. Victor Emanuel III Lodge was established, and shortly after, the Amerigo Vespucci Society was created. Both met at the community center and formed a women's auxiliary in 1935. The meetings were conducted in Italian, likely providing a greater sense of community and place here in Minnesota. Another prominent cultural group were the Slovenian immigrants and descendants. They organized into quite a few social clubs, especially the women. And as Kelsey from Ely Winton Historical Society stated, they really could have their own History Happy Hour program. Women in Ely founded Branch 23 of the Slovenian Union of America, of which we had an event hosted by the SLU celebrating Slovenian cinema here in Ely just last month in October. The Slovenian Women's Union was also referred to as the Dawn Club after the union's publication, Zarja, which means dawn. A few more of these women's Slovenian clubs included the Northland Cadets and Women's Marching Unit, who participated in various community parades, and the Slovenian Women's Chorus, which eventually allowed men and became the Ely Slovenian Chorus, recording not one, but two albums on tape and traveling worldwide. The arts and culture scene had and continues to have a strong showing among social clubs in Ely. The Vezi Temperance Lodge eventually became the Opera House and then a movie theater before its life as a bowling alley starting in the 1930s, which brought more social team sport activities. The Ely Music and Drama Club, formally organized in September 1923, was a combination of two smaller groups, the Drama Circle and the Actorettes. They formed an exclusive 25-person women's study group whose membership was by invitation only. As one of the oldest clubs active in Ely, it is still operating under the same exclusive bylaws after 102 years. However, many current members have moved into honorary status, creating several openings in the membership roster. So those of you still waiting for an invite, there is time. Drum and Bugle Corps were very popular groups, with one sponsored by the American Legion and led by Henry Dillon, starting in 1935, eventually becoming known as the Dillonaires, and who went on to win state championships. It appears that this or iterations of this group continued as the Northern Lights Drum and Bugle Corps, and now our own Ely High School band keeps this marching tradition going strong. If you're lucky enough to live near the school, you've likely experienced these talented young people practicing along your street in August. And I would be remiss if I didn't include the talented, fanciful, endearing, and terrifying to some Ely Clown Band that has been entertaining massive crowds as early as the 1920s. Ely currently has no shortage of youth clubs, teams, or groups, and there really is something for everyone. Cheers to the parent juggling umpteen fundraisers. Historically, a short-lived but exciting youth organization was Ely's American Youth Congress branch. The AYC was a Depression-era organization founded in 1934 to encourage youth to advocate for issues like racial justice, increased funding for education, and an end to mandatory ROTC, or Reserve Officers Training Corps, and was heavily supported by First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. Sadly, in 1939, it was investigated for communist leadership, expediting its demise by 1941. Womp womp. Trade guilds that eventually became unions and business owner or leader clubs were also fairly common. MAMPA was established in 1921 to support women business owners in town. MAMPA stood for More Ambition Means Pleasures Anew, and I wonder if anyone was confused over the purpose of this club. But worry not. Shortly after, the group changed its name to Ely Business Girls Club and opened membership to school teachers and other professional women. In 1947, the name was changed again to the Ely Business Women's Club and worked with other local groups, including the Ely Music and Drama Club, to support women in various professions, provide sponsorships to local youth organizations, and raise funds for a student loan fund and scholarship. In 1954, the club had a glow up and organized into a new era as the Ely Business and Professional Women's Club, and in the 70s opened up membership to residents of Babbitt and Tower. Another longtime club in Ely that focuses on women's success is the AAUW, or American Association of University Women, that supports equity for all girls and women in the areas of economic security, educational opportunities, and leadership through fundraising and scholarship programs. They'll be celebrating their 100th anniversary this coming year. Providing support and services to community members is a prevailing theme for many of our early and ongoing social clubs, which shouldn't come as a surprise given our human drive for community and connection. If you recall the very first History Happy Hour in 2023, this room that we are in was the meeting place for the Independent Order of the Oddfellows, the Scandinavian Fraternity of America, and the Masonic Lodge, all of which promote personal and social development, friendship and mutual support, community service, and charity in a structured framework with a group of people sharing a common profession, interest, or ethnic background. Other similar organizations in town included or currently include the Moose Lodge, started in 1914, the Benevolent Order of Brothers, now called Kiwanis International, started in 1926, Rotary Club, started in 1921, the Lions Club, the Ancient Arabic Order of the Nobles of the Mystic Shrine, known more commonly as the Shriners International, a part of the Masonic Rite, the JCs for young adults, and Northern American Benefit Association. The Northern American Benefit Association, which had a branch in Ely, originated in 1892 by Miss Bina West, a 25-year-old teacher in Michigan, who founded the Women's Benefit Association of the Maccabees to provide insurance policies for women. It was renamed the North American Benefit Association in 1966 and later became the Women's Life Insurance Society in 1996. Sadly, many of these clubs no longer exist due to a lack of funding, interest, and/or participation from younger generations. If you are interested in the health and well-being of our local communities, you should really learn more about the clubs or groups that employ these traditional fraternal missions in Ely today, and consider becoming a part of them to support their work in improving and enriching the lives of those living in and around Ely. Two examples include Northwoods Partners Senior Services that facilitates a myriad of social groups to promote healthy aging through physical and mental well-being, with groups related to memory care, cooking, exercise, and transportation, among others. And Ely Community Resources Key Club, where youth have opportunities to build intergenerational connections within the community and build strong organizational and leadership skills. Other iterations of fraternal groups focus on the celebration and preservation of cultural or religious traditions and values, such as the Yugoslav National Home Club, founded before the dissolution of Yugoslavia, Knights of Columbus in the Catholic Church, or the Finnish Knights and Ladies of Keleva. In our neck of the woods, the Ely Ladies of Keleva Velomon Tupa No. 4 was the first Ladies Keleva chapter to be formed in the state of Minnesota in 1905 and is possibly the oldest of our community's currently active social clubs. They will be celebrating this momentous occasion with a 120th anniversary celebration on Tuesday, December 9th at the Grand Ely Lodge. And of course, we have clubs for those who have committed their time, energy, blood, and sweat, and in some cases, their limbs and lives, to protect the rest of us and our freedoms. The Veterans of Foreign Wars and the American Legion offered services, advocacy, and a safe place to interact with others who could directly relate to the experience of being in combat. Clearly, social clubs contribute to our society, our well-being, and our lifespan. If you are still on the fence about being a joiner, consider the increased sense of community and belonging that naturally occurs, the additional sense of purpose added to each day, and increased practice of personal responsibility. Did you offer to take notes at the next Ely Community Center meeting? Did you volunteer to serve pie at the Kiwanis booth at the festival? Did you say you had an extra hockey stick for the new gal playing on Chicks with Sticks? Did you commit to helping make pasties this spring at the Methodist Church? These seemingly small responsibilities make big impacts and strengthen the fabric of our communities. Concurrently, we fortify our social networks while practicing democracy. Lessons in how our actions affect others, effective teamwork, following rules of order, and understanding how we interact with each other become life skills that may begin with a child's first dance lesson at Studio North at the tender age of 3. Research detailed in Robert Putnam's book, Bowling Alone, as it applies to education, urban poverty, unemployment, the control of crime and drug abuse, and health, explains that successful outcomes are more likely in civically engaged communities. The recent documentary, Join or Die, which you may have seen at the State Theater this past year, based on Putnam's book, argues that social and civic clubs are essential for democracy as well as individual health, and that increasing participation in clubs is a way to combat polarization and isolation, which we could all use a little less of right now. Whether or not you are involved in social groups in the Ely area, You are now well aware of the value and importance of having a social network full of connections for the well-being of you and your loved ones, the preservation of democratic processes, and community health. With the information I shared with you, I encourage you to find one or more of our local social clubs and consider supporting them in whatever way is most accessible to you. If you are interested in joining an organization that promotes the social club ideal and connects with a variety of social clubs, you may consider attending the Ely for Ely Social on December 9th at the Ely Winton Historical Society. Ely for Ely is for anyone who wants to see our community thrive. It's free, and there'll be snacks and a fun theme of dressing in something vintage or vintage inspired, only if you want. For those with financial means or those who aren't ready to join another club, tomorrow is the perfect day to donate. It's Give to the Max Day, the great Minnesota Give Together held every November. Give to the Max Day provides a platform and awareness to give for any nonprofit group in Minnesota. And last year, this effort raised over $37 million for 6,500 organizations around the state. In addition to offering this platform, GiveMin also offers prize drawings via a lottery system to all registered nonprofits, and every donation is a new entry. There are over 100 entities fundraising just in the Ely 55731 zip code, and many of them host, promote, or fund social clubs in our community. Your $5 donation could enter one of these organizations to win an extra $500,000 or $10,000 in prize drawings. My challenge to you is to consider trying something new this coming year. History has proven it's worth it. Local history is our shared history, and your engagement with this topic keeps it alive. Thank you for being here. Special thanks to the in-kind supporters who make this program a success, with special thanks to Kelsey Cook, who is my primary source for Ely information and imagery. Please join us next time to be inspired to learn more about our shared history when we talk about the origin of holiday carols.